What you are looking at here is Bruno Simon's 3D animated website. It's an amazing 3D animated website with interactive features. You can imagine how complex the code would be. When you're developing such complex web apps, you would most likely employ some form of testing. 3D animated websites are no different. They too can be tested. So why test? Testing is done to ensure that your app will work as intended for your end users. Having tests will make your app more robust and less error prone. Therefore, ensures you are creating a quality product. It is a way to verify that your code is doing as per requirements. In this video, you'll learn how to use out-the-box testing with React.js and Jest, learn how to set up React 3 fiber testing using React 3 test renderer, and learn basic concepts of test-driven development, and learn how to test the interactive nature of 3D animation. In this video, we're going to be developing a simple, we're going to be creating a simple interactive cube. When you click on it, it will enlarge and then contract when you click again. So it will toggle between two sizes. And as you can see, we can test the nature of the color and things like that. So if you like videos like this, please subscribe to my channel and let's get started. I'm in VS Code now, and I'm looking at the code that we're going to be testing. So so I've created this using Create React app. Now, as you can see, I've deleted all the unnecessary files, and I've just got the app.js, index.css, index.js, and also created a components directory, and I've got the component that we're going to be testing there. Okay, so I'm just going to run through the code now. So in the app.js, this is a basic React Fiber app, and I've got, as you can see at the top, I've imported a React 3 fiber, and I've also imported the cube, which is the component we're going to be testing. Okay, and we've got a simple index.css there. So we're not really test that, but you know, this is just for the demo. Okay, so in the basic app, we got a canvas, which is a React Fiber element, and you use the canvas to draw your 3D objects. So that's a basic wrapper that you always need. And within there, you got a light source, which is an ambient light, and a directional light. Okay, and then we have the 3D cube. Okay, so I've got this app running, and if I go to the browser, and I've got a cube which is rotating. Okay, and if I click on it, it enlarges. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be testing the interactivity, and we're going to be testing the color aspect of it, and also we're going to be testing to see what is being rendered, you know, the child elements, etc. Okay, so I'm going to go back. So to follow along with this video, you also need to install the dependencies. The dependencies are React 3 fiber. So you run npm install, and it's at React 3/fiber. So I've already run this, so you need to run that. Also, you need to run the test renderer, which is at React -3/test renderer. Okay, so I've already run that. So the two things you need to run. Okay, so I just continue. Now, as you can see, I've imported a React 3 fiber there in the app.js, and in the components we've got the cube component. So I'll just go over the code for this. So as you can see, I've imported React 3 fiber there as well, and the test render, I'll be using it when I start going through the test. Okay, so I haven't written the test yet. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the code for the cube, which is the rotating cube here. Okay, so in our cube component, we have an export function, which is the cube, and within there we have this JSX part, which is rendering the cube. And when we're dealing with 3D objects in React 3 fiber, we wrap it around a mesh. Okay, so the mesh contains all the information that you need to render the 3D object. So within the mesh, we've got these two child elements, which is a box buffer geometry and a mesh form material. Okay, the box buffer geometry is like a skeleton structure of your 3D shape. So we're rendering a box. Okay, so this will be the actual cube. So you have like various other spheres and other shapes that you can render. They're sort of predefined components. So we can just slip them into our app just like that. Okay, so then you have the material, which allows us to give the box the skeleton structure, texture and light and color and things like that. Okay, so these two basic elements brings our a cube to life. So that's what we're looking at here. So if I go back to the app.js, if I don't put the light on there, okay, I'll just show you how it appears. So it just appears as black. Okay, so that's why we need the light on the app.js in the top level. Okay, so I just wanted to show that. Okay, so I just want to make sure that's working here. Okay, so yep, it's working. All right, so if I go back to the cube component now. Okay, so that's the basic structure of our cube. Okay, so you have a mesh, a wrapper, and then you have the child elements, which is the buffer geometry, box buffer geometry, which is sort of a skeleton structure of our cube. And then we have the mesh form material, which gives it texture and color and things like that. Okay, so then we have this one line of code here, okay, which allows us to animate. So if I take that out and go to the browser, so all you see is a square, which is sort of a stationary, not moving. Okay, so just for this demo, I've just put that line in there. Okay, so we're not going to be testing this, but if I go to the mesh element, it has some properties for scale, on click, and we're using R3f for our mesh, so that it's defined with React use ref. So this allows us to allows a React 3 fiber to control the rendering. So that's what that's for. Okay, so then on click, we're using a state there. So we're toggling the state. So on click, we're changing the state, and on the scale, you can see that the scale is a ternary, and we're toggling between two different values there. So depending on the active state. So when you click on it, the state toggles to true or false there. And then that will cause it to change the scaling there. So that's what we're going to be testing. We're going to be testing the on-click interactivity, the scaling, and we're going to also look at the color aspect of it as well. Okay, so that's the code structure, and that's what we're going to be testing. Okay, so just going back to the browser. So this is when I click on this, the scale changes. That's what's happening here. So this is a scale of 4, and this is scale of 2, and that's what we're doing here. So that's what we're going to be checking for. Now let's talk about the testing. Now, when you do a create React app, in React, you already have this out-the-box testing with Jest. So if I go into the package.json, you can see all the testing components loaded there. Okay, so it's got the testing jest.dom React. So it's already configured to do testing. Okay, so and if I go down, we got the React 3 test renderer installed as well. So we're going to be using that. So to run the test, you can manually run the test running the script. So you got the script there, the test script. So that's all you need. So you don't really need to do anything new. So when you go to terminal and you can just do npm run test, and that will run all the tests that you have. Now when you run npm test, the script will look for files with the extension .test.js. So what we need to do is we need to create a test for this file. So the usual way you can do it, you can structure in different ways. You can create a separate folder called test, or underscore test underscore. There's different conventions of doing it, but what we're going to do is we're going to just create the tests file under the components, and we're just going to create a file called so I'm just going to create a file called cube, and that's the component, and .test.js. So all you got to do is add test.js after the component name. Okay, so that's how we're going to do the test here. Okay, so when you run the test, it will run this file, and it will run all the tests in there. So that's all you need to be aware of. But there are different ways you can do. You can structure it. I'm going to be writing the test in a sort of a test-driven approach, which basically means I will write a test that will fail. Then I write the code to pass that test, and then I'll write the next test, and that will also fail. Then I'll write the code to pass that test. So basically, I'm going to write the code from scratch, and it's going to be driven by the tests, rather than the other approach is like, you create the component, then you write the unit tests afterwards. So this is sort of incrementally writing the code based on the tests. Okay, so I'm going to go to cube.js, and I'm going to just delete that, and we're going to write the code from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to save that, and then I go to cube.test, and if I go to the terminal and they say npm run test, and that's how you run the test, by the way. Okay, and it will say it failed, but and you just say run all tests. Okay, so yeah, in that option it will you gotta tell it to run all tests. Okay, so it's failed. It's got one failed test, and if you look at the message, it says your test soup must contain at least one test. So we haven't written the test yet, so that's why it's failed. Okay, so to start writing our test, first we're going to be importing two things. The first thing is we're going to import the test renderer. So it's import React3 test renderer from at react-3/test renderer. Okay, as you recall, we've done an npm install React3 test renderer earlier. Okay, so we've got that installed already. So we also going to import the component that we're going to be testing, which is the cube. As you recall, I've deleted the actual export function for the cube, so there's no cube there at the moment. That's why the test was failing. So we're going to write it from scratch. Okay, to write each test, we're going to start off with a test, a function, and in the text function, we're going to pass two values. One is the description of the test. For our first test, we were going to have a mesh to have two children. Okay, so we're basically going to render the component, and it should have a material and a so it should have two children. It should have a material component and a geometry component. And the second value we're going to pass is going to be a function, and is a callback function. And as we're going to be using the test React 3 test renderer, that's an async function, so it's gonna be an async callback. Okay, within that callback, we're gonna have a block of code. Let me just minimize this. We're gonna have a block of code, and this block of code will be rendering the component, and it will extract some values from the render tree. So in the next part of the test, you're going to have an expect function, and in the expect function, you're going to evaluate some aspect of the rendered component, and then you're going to compare it with what it is to be expected. Okay, so there's an expected value and what you actually received, what you know, the actual result. Okay, so the expect part. So you're going to have, like, say, my component dot children dot length. So it's going to render this our cube, and it's going to inspect the children, and then we're going to look at the length, and then you have a method to be, which will have we're going to pass the value what it should be. So if when you evaluate this, say if the value is 3, and we actually and it should be a 2, then this test is going to fail. But if this results in 2, then it matches the to be value, so 2, so that it passes. So that's how you actually do the test. So I've just used my component as an example, but we're going to be writing the block of code. So I'm going to comment this out. We're not going to be doing that or that. Okay, so we just leave it like that for the time being. Okay, and so we're going to be writing the block of code, and we're going to be running the test as we write the block of code. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a constant called renderer, which is going to contain our rendered object for our cube. And the way we get the rendered object is we're going to use the React 3 test renderer. Okay, so it's going to be it's an async function, so it's going to be await and React 3 test renderer, and it's gonna and you're gonna call the create method, and within there we're gonna pass the cube function. Okay, so cube, and we save that, and it should create an error. I mean, well, it shouldn't. It won't pass the test. Okay, so it's saying we'll go to the error. So the invalid type is invalid expected string, or you're most likely forgot to export the component. So we haven't got the component, so that test fails. So that's what we were looking for. So now we write the code for Q, so this test passes. So to pass this test, we're going to write a simple function. It's going to be an empty function, and then it should pass. Okay, so we're just going to do export function called a cube, and all we're going to do is and it's just going to be an empty function. Okay, so now we've got to look at the test, go down. Okay, so it's passed the test. Okay, so that's all we needed to do to pass this test. It just needs to export a function called cube. Okay, now that we've got our rendered cube, we can inspect that and look at how many children it has. Remember, we're testing for how many children our mesh is going to have. Okay, so if I go to the React 3 fiber testing page, it tells you how to get the children of our rendered object. Okay, so what it talks about is you can access it. So if this is your rendered object, you have a scene, and then you have children, and basically what they say is you have to target the first. The children is an array, and you have to target the first one. So it'll be in square brackets 0. That's what it's saying there. Okay, then that will have something called all children, which contains the actual geometry and material, etc. So this part will only contain the mesh. Okay, so the mesh will have something called all children. So that's the format that we're gonna follow. So we're just gonna copy that and go back to our code, and we'll create a constant called, we just call it mesh, is equal to that. Okay, so so that's going to look at the renderer object, and it's going to look at and it's going to look at the scene, then the first children array element, and within there you'll have all children. So this will contain this will contain the children of our mesh. Okay, so so if I save this, okay, this is going to fail, right? We'll go down. So it's failed here. So what it's saying is mesh. A mesh to have two children cannot read property all children of undefined. Okay, so the test is failing because we haven't written the code for the mesh. So if I go up to the cube, as you remember, we just got an empty function here at the moment. So now we're going to write the code for our mesh so that this test will pass. So to pass this test, we need to render a mesh with two child elements. So we're going to say return, and we're going to return some JSX, and we're going to return a mesh. And this mesh will have a ref with we're going to create it using a useRef hook. So, and then we're going to say ref equals mesh. Okay, then within the mesh we're going to have a box geometry, and then we're also going to have a mesh pong material. Okay, so if I save this, and it should pass the test. Okay, so it's passed the test. So it's and if I go to the browser, okay, and this is what we see in the browser. So so it's a very basic cube, and it passes the test. Okay, so going back to our test now. So I'm gonna just drag this down. So next we're gonna write the test with the expect function. So we're gonna look for how many children it's been rendered. Okay, so before I do that, I go back to the cube. I'm gonna make sure that the test is gonna fail because we got two children there already. So I'm just gonna have one child there and save there, and then in the expect part, I'm just gonna uncomment that, and then I'm gonna say expect mesh dot length, okay, to be two. So if I save that, and that should fail. Okay, so it's failed. So so it's giving you more sort of details there. If we go back and just make that bigger. Okay, so expect received 1, and it's expected 2, so that's why it's failed. The object is not equality. Okay, so so what we received is 1, so because we only got one child, and it was expecting 2. Okay, so if I go to there and just put that back in, and I save, and now the test should automatically run now. Okay, so it's running. Okay, now it's passed. So it's so I just wanted to demonstrate, you know, that the test failed, and then we wrote the code to pass it. Okay. Okay, so we've done one test, and so it's all working. So now we can, I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit. See, okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to write our next test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this and then just delete the bits that I don't want. Okay, so I'm just going to comment this out. I'm going to have an expect. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to delete that. I don't need that. Okay, so and the description for this test is going to be cube to have color blue. Okay, so it's going to be the same async function callback. Okay, and we're going to load our cube component. Okay, so let's just save this, and this should work at this point because we've tested that already. Tested loading there. Okay, so 2 tests are passed. Okay, so it's past that. Okay, so we're gonna continue running the writing our test, and the next thing we need to do is we need to search for the color blue. That's what we're going to test. So we need to search this rendered object for elements with color blue. So to do that, we're going to say constant. I'm going to say search by color is equal to, and it's the renderer, and it's dot scene, and we're going to say dot find all. Okay, and this will have a callback function, so it's going to be an arrow function. Is equal to, right, and so we're going to have a object. We're going to pass an object. We're going to call it a node. Okay, and then the node, we don't need the curly brackets, we're just going to do a straight return. So it's a node dot props dot color. Okay, and equals triple equals, and it's going to be, we're going to have the color as royal blue. Right, royal blue. Okay, so this will search the rendered object, looking at the scene, and it will, so this will look at all the nodes that have property color equals to royal blue. Okay, so then we can, in the expect, we can say search by color, search by color. Okay, so this should return one element, so it should be 1. Search by color dot length. Sorry, so the search by color, the length, so it should return one element. So that's what we're checking here. So if I save this, and this should fail because we don't have the code. Okay, so it's failed. Okay, so the reason it's failed is expect received 0 and expected 1. Okay, so it's done a search and it's received nothing. Okay, so if I go back to the code, and all we need to do is we say in the mesh from material, we say color equals to inverted commas, and it's a royal blue. Right, so if we run the test, it should automatically run. So it's running, so that's passed. Okay, so that's all you need to do. So you can search for other properties in this manner. Okay, for the final test, what we're going to do is we're going to test the click event, and when you click the cube, the scaling should increase. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the first test. I'm just going to go up and copy that and then just modify that and paste it at the end. And I'm going to change the description, and the description for this is click event and it makes cube bigger. Okay, so when you click on it, we're going to have a click event, and then when you click on it, it will increase in size. Okay, so so I'm gonna leave the renderer there, and I'm gonna, in the mesh, I'm going to be looking at the mesh element. Okay, so to inspect the mesh element, it will be just, you just specify the first child of the scene. Okay, so that'll be our mesh. Okay, and then I'm gonna comment this out because we're not gonna be later. We're gonna be dealing with that later. Okay, so if I run the test, okay, so that shouldn't give any errors. Okay, so it's passed 3 tests. Okay, so we can uncomment this now. Okay, and we're gonna have more code here. So first instance, we're gonna check the initial scale to be 2. Okay, so we're gonna say mesh, and we're gonna inspect the props. Okay, and the scale to be 2. If I save this and look at the test, okay, so it's failed. If I go up, okay, it says says expected and received and expected. So expected, I got 2. Okay, that's that value, and received undefined because we don't have a property for we haven't written the code for the scale, right? So that's what we're going to do now. So if I go to the code, I'm going to go to the cube.js, and I would need to put in a property there and just say scale equals 2. Okay, so this is going to be our initial scale. So if I save that, and okay, if we go down, so the test has passed. So it's three passed, okay, out of total, so 3. Okay, so it's passed that test, so that is working. Okay, so that's working, right? So if you read the test carefully, we're sort of clicking on the cube, and the cube should get bigger. So we need to simulate a click, then a check, and then have another expect to check the scale. So it should be the size should be bigger. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to simulate a click. So we're going to say await and renderer. Okay, and we're going to say dot fire event, and we're going to pass in a mesh, and then it's going to be comma, and then inverted commas and click. So this just simulates a click. Okay, so there won't be any errors unless we pass in something else, like say something like XXX or ZZZ, right? If I save that, and it will give you an error because there's no component, well, there's no object called mesh Z, so it's got an error. So if I just pass in mesh, so it will pass the test. Okay, so it's passed the test. So we can assume that fire event has worked. Okay, so now we're gonna say we're going to say expect the mesh property scale to be 4. Okay, so this will fail because it hasn't increased in size, because we haven't written the code to increase in size, so it's failed. And so the expected value is 4 and the received value is 2. So because we've only put in the initial scale of 2, and after the click it hasn't increased. So it's doing that, but it's failing at that. Okay, so now we're going to write the code to pass this test. So I'll go to the cube component. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a state for the scale, and it should toggle between the state when you click on it. So we're going to have, first we're going to go at the top and say constant, and we're going to say we're going to declare, we're going to use state to declare. So it's going to be equals use state, and we're going to say it's going to be active and set active. Okay, so we're going to have a state called active, and then we're going to use state to, we're going to initialize it as false. All right, and so then we go to the scale part, and we just put in active as a ternary, and then and it's going to toggle between values 4 and 2. Okay, so if active is true, then it's going to be 4. If it's false, then it's going to be 2. Okay, so the initial state is false. Okay, so this, if I save this and I check the browser, I check the terminal for the test. Okay, so it's we go up, so it's failed because we haven't put in a click event handler. Okay, so we're going to add another click on there. We're going to add another property for a click event. Okay, so we're going to say on click equals to open close curly brackets, and it's going to have a callback function, and it's going to be an arrow function. And all we're going to do is we're going to change the state. So we're going to say set active, and we're going to toggle it. So we're going to say not active. So when you click on it, it will set active, and it's going to toggle between true and false for the active. Remember, we've set it as false. So initially it'll be false, then when you click on it, it'll be true. Okay, so if I save this and go to the test, go down. Okay, so it's going to run the test. So it's passed all 3 tests now. Okay, so remember when we had to put in the click event, then it passed the test. So that's how you test click events. So if I go to the browser to check what's outputted on the browser, if I do a refresh, okay, so if I click on it, it enlarges. Okay, so I can also go back and then in the code. So if I put in the code to rotate. Okay, so we haven't tested this. So this is a simple way of animating a cube. So it's use frame, and it has a callback, and all we're doing is every frame we're changing the rotation x value, incrementing it by 0.01. Okay, so this will rotate it in the next. So as you can see, this is a cube and it's rotating, and when you click on it, it enlarges and contracts. Okay, So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and please join me on my next video. Thank you.